Before we delve into our segment, a little background of our guest. Mikhail Gorbachev was born on March 2nd, 1931. He was the eighth and final leader of the Soviet Union. He was also the General Secretary of the Communist Party from 1995 until 1991. His efforts to democratize the country's political system and decentralize its economy led to the downfall of communism and the breakup of the Soviet Union. His reign of power as the leader of the USSR followed the era of stagnation, which was a time of halt for political, economic, and social change. Therefore, Gorbachev was left with a messy union to fix. Throughout his six-year term, he tried to implement many famous policies, such as perestroika and glasnost, to increase civilian participation in politics, and encourage the practice of private businesses, and introduce elements of Western democracy in hopes for a better future for Russia. This is Answer the Internet.
Good evening. Welcome to Answer the Internet. Tonight we have a very special guest, Mikhail Gorbachev, and he's going to be answering the most burning questions about his administration. Here are the questions, and he's going to answer them.
All right, thank you. All right, so my first question is, would you rather be in a country that encourages state capitalism or one that uses a traditionally communist economic system? I would definitely prefer state capitalism, only because I feel like state capitalism is what is necessary for Russia to be able to move forward economically. The old communist system did not work well enough, and it just wasn't able to compete with the other world markets. While I don't believe in total privatization of everything, I don't have an issue with certain things being privatized. That's part of the reason that we implemented perestroika. So my next question is, would you rather bring change by revolution, such as the 1917 revolution, or bring change through a policy, such as perestroika? So with the 1917 revolution, while I do agree with getting rid of the Romanovs and their autocratic rule, I don't agree with necessarily the means by it, by using violence and stuff. I believe in evolution over revolution. Even though I was a Leninist for a while, I've kind of moved farther away from communism, and they were replacing autocratic rule with communism. So I would definitely prefer perestroika. The point of perestroika was moving away from communism, not through revolution or violence, but through policies that better the people's lives, move to more open markets or more open market economy where there's more privatization, less state-run stuff, openness of the media, and basically bringing more democratic ideas into Russia. So my next question is, would you rather have the KGB or the FSB? Neither. I mean, if I really had to choose. Because the FSB is literally just a rebranding of the KGB. The KGB tried to overthrow me at one point. And the KGB basically, in my opinion, rules in fear. They overstep their power. When Yeltsin was president, who I always thought was corrupt, there was the apartment bombings, which a lot of people point to the FSB for that. And I think they used the same tactics as the KGB to try and influence certain spheres of Russian society that they shouldn't be getting involved in. In my opinion, the job of the KGB and now the FSB is to protect its citizens, but not encroach on its rights to the point that it's making its citizens fear its own government. In your opinion, what would be some of the reasons for the collapse of your Soviet Union, and how would you explain the decision to avoid conflict? The collapse of the Soviet Union, it basically happened due to the fact that communism was not an economic system that could keep up with the other world's markets. Basically, the lack of privatization, while I don't believe in full-on privatization of everything, there wasn't the ability inside with communism for economic growth and upward mobility in the Soviet Union, and that really made us lacking in comparison to other nations. Another thing to add to the collapse of the Soviet Union is we tried to compete with the West in the arms race. We put a lot of money and resource into it, but we could not. We ended up getting technologically beat by countries such as the United States and Great Britain, and we were on a path to destruction if we kept trying to keep up with them. Or when the fall of the Berlin Wall came, it was basically a symbolic image of the fall of communism. And I decided to not do anything about it because I wanted to let the people had made their decision, so I was going to let them live with the decision they decided to make and not intervene. And I was a member of the Communist Party, so a lot of people were wondering why I did not act on it. There was a lot of disagreement and infighting on it. So I ultimately decided to just step down because I wanted to move Russia in a new direction and try and leave behind the bad parts of its Soviet past without having the conflict of civil war and any violent outbreaks. So then my next question is, what is your opinion on the military? And how do you view the decision to act with violence versus demilitarization? So my opinion on the military is I think it's definitely necessary for the safety of its people. However, it can't be the only objective of our country. We can't put everything into the military. That's one of the mistakes we made with the arms race. I believe trying to solve things peacefully instead of violently. And I kind of demilitarized a lot of the Russian military, tried to get rid of some of the nuclear weapons, and also cut some of the funding or some of the spending on the military because there were other aspects of Russia that needed to be addressed with some of the government's money. All right, my next question is, would you rather a sovereign president who rules over his people or one who is part of his people and works with them? This is a no-brainer. I would choose someone who works with the people. When I was president, I made sure to implement policies that I thought would help out the general population of Russia as a whole instead of small pockets of people who are very powerful and have the influence. I do not believe in that type of leadership where you only try and give favors to people who are in the powerful, 1% of your country. That was part of the reason I had issues with Yeltsin. I thought he was very corrupt. We moved to capitalism under Yeltsin. He took all the bad from capitalism, where only a few people in the country were able to get rich while the rest got poor. And now with Putin, he rules with fear. He's not interested in the people of Russia, which is why I implemented perestroika and glasnost, because I wanted the people to have trust in their government and understand that their government is looking out for the best of them. So I do think that President Putin needs to change his ways. Next question is, what do you think is one of the most important foreign policies you supported? So I would by far say denuclearization. Nuclear weapons are one of the biggest threats to this world. The horrors of Nagasaki, that can never happen again. And while I was president, I did the INF with the United States. When performing denuclearization, I made sure to, me and President Reagan, we both followed along the same motto of trust but verify, where we wanted to trust that the United States would get rid of some of their nuclear weapons, but it also takes the actual action of the other nation verifying that that is going on. I think that's very important for us to be doing that today, especially with newer countries such as North Korea trying to arm themselves with nuclear weapons. And then my next question is, should you have abandoned the Communist political party earlier? And how did you try and change the political culture of Russia while president? I definitely should have abandoned the Communist Party earlier. I do believe that I stuck along with the party way too long, and I should have formed a new, more democratic party. While I once did support communism, I just don't think it was the party had the complete best interest of the nation towards the fall of the Soviet Union. And how I tried to change the political culture, for example, glasnost. I wanted our government, our politicians to, be more open and, have transparency and, try and prevent where corruption happens. I hope that my reforms would overcome the alienation from the system and give Soviet citizens the confidence that they can participate in the reform processes without fear of retribution from the state. Also, I tried to seek to change the culture in the Kremlin of large spending on defense. I believed investing in a healthy economy would lead to a strong, defensible Russia. So we used to be very big war hawks, with lots of spending on defense, but not focusing on other areas.